On this edition of The Fifth Estate, call it the fog of war. Say it's because truth is the first casualty.
This is not a combat mission, and our role is clearly defined.
Or blame it on Ottawa. But Canada's military role in the fight against Islamic State may be the most secretive Canadian mission ever.
A preview there of tonight's season premiere of The Fifth Estate. Their team's been looking into Canada's war against ISIS, our so-called clean record, and how the mission might change in the future. The Fifth Estate's Bob McKeown is here now to tell us more about what he and the team uncovered. Glad to have you with us this morning. Looks absolutely fascinating. You're calling it the hidden war.
Yep.
Why hidden?
As we said, plausibly this is the most secret Canadian military mission ever, for a number of reasons. It is a complicated and complex situation in part of the world. To the enemy, Islamic State, they're not issuing press releases usually about the truth of what's happening. There are no journalists behind Islamic State lines. They've all been captured or tortured and or executed. They've been banned, essentially. And finally, it is, in the past century, the only major Canadian conflict where there are no journalists in the field or at the front with Canadian soldiers. So add those up, and that's why we called it the hidden war.
Well, and that speaks to the challenge that you and your team faced in getting voices on this. And some of the people you spoke with, I gather, did so at great personal risk.
Yeah, interestingly, we did get an interview finally after we came back from Iraq with the Canadian commander over there. But we knew going in, they had told us we would have access to no operations, to no personnel, to no training, nothing. We went anyway, obviously. And as it happened, near the front in northern Iraq where the Canadians are based, and these are the ground troops, the several dozen special forces, across the road, 200 meters or 20 meters away, is the Peshmerga base. The Peshmerga are the Kurdish military in northern Iraq who man the front with Islamic State, and the ones with whom the Canadians work most closely. They were only too happy to see us and to talk to us and to take us to the front and to go into the operations room and show us what they do with the Canadians. So we got that view. But yes, the most challenging part of this was getting the voices of people behind Islamic State lines, living in places which are occupied in Syria or Iraq. We did that. In fact, we got access to 3 times as many of those people than we did members of the Canadian military. One young man who's been speaking to us on Skype for months now, literally risking his life. He knows they're looking for him, and he's been smuggling video to us. He lives in a city in Syria called Deir ez-Zor, which has been occupied for a year or so. So we get smuggled video, and then there's an incredibly courageous woman who is looking at civilian casualties in the bombing behind Islamic State lines. And she actually went through 3 different countries to get out of Mosul, the occupied city of Mosul, into northern Iraq to talk to us.
Wow.
And then went back again because her family is there. So it's a unique look at this war that we've really learned very little about.
That tells you the extent to which people believe these stories need to come out.
Yep.
And the stories about casualties. And I gather people are going to be shocked and saddened when they see some of the numbers and some of what you learned.
Yeah, disappointed probably more. And it should be said, Islamic State has killed tens of thousands of people. You know, the coalition bombing campaign is clearly trying to address that. And the numbers are not equivalent in any way.
Right.
But if you ask the coalition what their record is, of a total of 8,000 airstrikes, they say there have been only 2 civilian fatalities. Of 181 so far, the Canadians say their record is clean. Well, if you talk to anybody in this area, except for them, they say that's statistically impossible. We did our own research. The Canadians, the coalition, really just look at bombings afterwards from their aircraft cameras. So it's thousands of feet in the air, that view. We contacted people on the ground in both Syria and Iraq, in places where there had been coalition bombings with allegations of civilian casualties, and especially in places where Canadians had bombed and there were allegations of civilian casualties. So you'll see tonight what we found. We found not 2 incidents, but possibly 600 fatalities involving 50 different coalition bombings, which are plausibly cases of civilian casualties. So our question really is, are they looking? They're saying their record is perfect. how hard are they looking to find out?
So much to watch for on this, especially given the new reality in Canada with the new incoming Prime Minister saying he wants to end the bombing and turn it more into a training mission. And before you go, I also just want to ask you quickly about your team's encounter there. This is a dangerous place.
Yeah, we were at the front, and we got ourselves caught in a mortar attack. And this is an interesting example. We were 10 meters away from a Peshmerga soldier who was killed and 3 others who were wounded. We followed them back several kilometers down the road to the Canadian base. And we thought they didn't want to see us in the first place, but here we were. We had almost been killed. We were with a person who had been killed and 3 had been wounded. At least we'd be able to see the Canadians trying to save lives. And when we got our camera out, we were asked to leave. So that just gives you a sense of how difficult it is to get information here. And I think, immodestly speaking, it's why what you'll see tonight is so unique.
This will be must-see television. Thanks so much for coming in and talking to us about it, Bob.
Thanks, Jennifer.
You can catch Bob McKeown's full report on the season premiere of The Fifth Estate. It airs tonight on CBC Television at 9 p.m., 9:30 in Newfoundland, and right here on CBC News Network tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern.